Alright, here's the video on the sample final for 153. The distance from A to B. So the distance formula is the change in x squared plus change in y squared square root. So that would be the square root of the x goes from 2 to 6, or 6 minus 2 is 4 squared, plus y goes from 4 to minus 2, that's down 6, or minus 2 minus 4 is negative 6, but that quantity is squared, and so that becomes positive 36, and 16 is 4252, square root of 52. Now if you recognize that that's 4 times 13, square root of 4 times the square root of 13, that would become 2 square roots of 13 if you know how to reduce that, and might earn you a bonus point. Find the equation of the line. So the line would have a slope, and there's lots of ways to do this, but the slope is going to be the change in y, which we just figured out was negative 6, that's negative 2 minus 4, over 4, which is negative 3 halves. So if we do the slope intercept, that's going to be y equals negative 3 halves times x plus the y-intercept. So if we take negative 3 halves times 2, we get negative 3, and we'd have to add 7 to make it equal 4, because that's what the y was supposed to be. So we get negative 3 halves x plus 7. Okay, made a mess there. I could also do it with the point slope form, which would be y minus, I'll just use the same point, 4 parentheses equals the slope, negative 3 halves times x minus 2. And the general form would be negative 3, that's the change in y, times x minus the change in x, 2 times the y equals, and if I put in 2 I get negative 6, and 4 I get negative 8. Negative 6 and negative 8 is negative 6, negative 8 is negative 14. And if I divided everything by negative 1, I get 3x plus 2y equals 14. Okay. Find the equation of the line through the point 2, 0, that's perpendicular to AB. So I could use any one of these, but I'll go back to here because that's the one most of you are comfortable with. So if the line was negative 3 halves x plus 7, we're going to throw away the 7 because that just locates the line vertically. And we're going to use the slope that's perpendicular, so instead of negative 3 halves, it'll be 2/3, the opposite in sign and reciprocal. So the equation would be y equals 2/3 x plus b, and to find the b, I want to go through the point 2, so 2 times 2/3 is 4/3, and the y is going to be 0, so I'm going to have 0 equals 4/3 plus b. So b is going to have to be minus 4/3 to make it equal to 0. And so our equation would be y equals 2/3 x plus minus 4/3. There's that answer, either there or there or there's the answer to B, and there's the answer to A. Unsimplified, there's the answer to A. That's number 1. Number 2, write equation of a circle in the general form with a center there, so that would be x minus 3 squared because it's moved plus 3. It'd be y plus 2 because it's moved minus 2. And that equals the radius squared, which would be 5 squared, or 25. And if I want the general form, that means multiply this out and get them x squareds and the y squareds and then the x's and then the y's and then the constant equals 0. So this is going to be x squared minus 6x plus 9 plus y squared plus 4y plus 4 equals 25. So starting with the x squared, then the y squared for the general form, then the x's, then the y's, and then we get 9 and 4 is 13, minus 25 is minus 12 equals 0. Number 3, find the center and radius. So we're going to reverse this process. So we're going to put the x's close together. Excuse me. X squared plus 6x plus something we don't know yet, plus y squared minus 7y plus something equals 10, plus whatever we add there, plus whatever we add there. So now, what are those numbers? Well, we're going to go to x plus half of 6 is 3 squared, and so that'll make a 9. We're going to go plus y minus half of 7 is 3.5 or 7 halves. That's easier to square that. So minus 7 halves times negative 7 halves is plus 49 fourths. And so we end up with all of this is in this, all of this is in that, and so we just have to put this together. 4 into 49 goes 16 and 3/4. No. 4 into 48 is 12 and 1/4. 12 and 1/4. So we have 10, 19, 21, 31, and 1/4. Find the center. So the center is negative 3 7 halves, and the radius, that would be equal to the square root of 31 and 1/4. And you could probably simplify that, but you don't need to. Okay, so that was number 3. Number 4, find the domain for this. Well, we have a square root, and we can't have a negative under the square root. We can have 0 or positive, so 2 plus 8x has to be equal to 0 or greater than 0. So if I subtract 2, I get 8x greater than or equal to negative 2. Divide by 8, and I get x has to be greater than or equal, because I'm dividing by a positive, so I don't have to flip the sign. Remember, it's when I divide or multiply by a negative that I would have to flip the sign. So this is negative 1/4. All right, number 5, piecewise graph. So this says y equals 3 minus x. Y equals 3 minus x. That's minus x plus 3 in the y equals mx plus b form. So if I make my grid here, put the axes on it. So there's the y and there's the x. And I think I'll get everything on there. When x is less than negative 1, so there's x equal to negative 1, so over here where it's less than, we're going to graph this line. Well, that line goes through plus 3 with a slope of minus 1. And I want to do it from not -1, but less than -1, which would be that portion of the line. Then it says y equals x plus 2, which has a y-intercept of 2, slope of +1, so that line goes this direction. But I only want to graph it from -1, including -1. That line up to 4, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it would stop at 4 with a solid because it says equal. So there's the graph, and now let's list the intercepts. Well, this line part never reaches the axis because it stops there, and this one does reach it, the y-axis, at 2. So when x is 0, y is 2. And no, it doesn't, neither of these touch the x-axis. Z of -5. So -5 is less than -1, so we're going to use this one. 3 minus a -5 is 8. So that's what we get when we put -5 into this function. We don't put it in the other one because -5 is not between these two. Now 2 is between these two, so I'd put 2 into here, and I'd have 2 plus 2, which equals 4. Now